The Idries Shah Foundation podcast. Practical Psychology for Today. Featuring the works of Idries Shah, voiced by David Alt. Welcome to the Idries Shah Foundation podcast. In this edition of the podcast, we will hear selections from Wisdom of the Idiots by Idries Shah. This audio is made available by the Idries Shah Foundation. Ahra and the Wealthy Couple. Emiruddin Arosi, who came from a family well known for its adherence to the beliefs of a sect of enthusiasts, met a sage and said to him, "My wife and I have for many years tried resolutely to follow the dervish path. Aware that we knew less than many others, we have for long contented ourselves with spending our wealth in the cause of truth. We have followed people who have taken on themselves the responsibility of teaching, and whom we now doubt. We grieve, not for what we have lost in material donations squandered in ineffectual commercial enterprises by our late mentors in the name of the task, but rather for the waste of time and effort, and for the people still in a state of subjection to deluded and self-appointed teachers, people mindlessly occupying a house run by two false Sufis in an atmosphere of abnormality." The sage, whom tradition names as Khwaja Ahra, the Lord of the Free, answered, "You have repented your attachment to imitative teachers, but you have not yet repented your own self-esteem, which makes you imagine that you have a responsibility to the prisoners of the false. Many of the prisoners are themselves still caught in the web of deceit, because they too have not repented deceit and want easy knowledge." "What should we do?" asked Emiruddin Arosi. "Come to me with an open heart and without conditions, even if such conditions are the service of mankind, or my appearing to you to be reasonable," said the master. "For the release of your companions may be a matter for experts, not for you. Your capacity even to form an opinion about me is impaired, and I for one refuse to rely upon it." But quite naturally, afraid that they might be making another mistake, Arosi and his wife passed on, to find another man, one who would comfort them. And they did. He, as it happened, was just another fraud. Years again passed, and the couple made their way back to the house of Khwaja Ahra. "We have come in all submission," they informed the keeper of the gate, "to place ourselves in the hands of the Lord of the Free, as if we were corpses in the hands of the washer of the dead." "Good people," said the gatekeeper, "your resolve seems excellent, and much like that of those whom the Lord of the Free would often accept as disciples. But there is no second chance for you in this life, for Khwaja Ahra is dead." Bahuddin and the Wanderer. Bahuddin el-Shah, great teacher of the Naqshbandi dervishes, one day met a confrère in the great square of Bokhara. The newcomer was a wandering calendar of the Malamati, the blameworthy. Bahuddin was surrounded by disciples. "From where do you come?" he asked the traveller in the usual Sufi phrase. "I have no idea," said the other, grinning foolishly. Some of Bahuddin's disciples murmured their disapproval of this disrespect. "Where are you going?" persisted Bahuddin. "I do not know," shouted the dervish. "What is good?" By now a large crowd had gathered. "I do not know." "What is evil?" "I have no idea." "What is right?" "Whatever is good for me." "What is wrong?" "Whatever is bad for me." The crowd, irritated beyond its patience by this dervish, drove him away. He went off, striding purposefully in a direction which led nowhere, as far as anyone knew. "Fools," said Bahuddin Naqshband. "This man is acting the part of humanity. While you were despising him, he was deliberately demonstrating heedlessness, as each of you does, all unaware, every day of your lives." Food and pens. Once upon a time, and this is a true story, there was a student. He used to go every day to sit at the feet of a Sufi teacher, to take down on paper what the master said. Because he was so fully occupied with his studies, he was unable to follow any gainful occupation. One evening, when he arrived home, his wife placed a bowl before him, covered with a napkin. He took the cloth and put it around his neck, and then he saw that the dish was full of pens and paper. "Since this is what you do all day," she said, "just try to eat it." The next morning the student went, as usual, to learn from his teacher. Although his wife's words had distressed him, he continued to follow the accustomed pattern of studies and did not go out looking for a job. After a few minutes writing, he found that his pen was not working well. "Never mind," said the master. "Go into that corner and bring the box you will find there and put it in front of you." When he sat down with the box and opened its lid, he found that it was full of food. The glance of power. A dervish who had studied at the feet of a great Sufi teacher was told to perfect his knowledge of the sensing exercise, and then to return to his master for further instruction. He retired to a forest and concentrated upon inner meditations with great force and application, until hardly anything could disturb him. He had, however, not concentrated well enough upon the need to keep all his objectives equally in his heart, and his zeal to succeed in his exercise proved somewhat stronger than his resolve to return to the school from which he had been sent to meditate. Thus it was that, one day, while he was concentrating upon his inner self, a slight sound caught his ear. Annoyed at this, the dervish looked upwards into the branches of a tree from which the sounds seemed to come, and saw a bird. The thought crossed his mind that this bird had no right to interrupt the exercises of so dedicated a man. No sooner had he conceived this idea than the bird dropped dead at his feet. Now the dervish was not sufficiently advanced in the path of Sufihood to realize that there are tests all the way along the road. All that he could see at that moment was that he had attained a power such as he had never had before. He could kill a living thing, or it might even be that the bird had been killed by some force other than one within himself, and all because it had interrupted his devotions. "I must indeed be a great Sufi," thought the dervish. He got up and started to walk towards the nearest town. When he got there, he saw an elegant house and decided to ask there for something to eat. When the door was opened by a woman at his knock, the dervish said, "Woman, bring me food, for I am an advanced dervish, and there is merit in feeding those who are on the path." "As soon as I can, revered sage," answered the lady, and she disappeared within. But quite a long time passed, and still the woman did not come back. With each moment that passed, the dervish became more and more impatient. When the woman returned, he said to her, "Consider yourself lucky that I do not direct upon you the wrath of the dervish. For does not everyone know that ill fortune can come through disobedience of the elect?" "Ill fortune can indeed come, unless one is unable to resist it through some experiences of one's own," said the woman. "How dare you answer me like that?" the dervish shouted. "And what, in any case, do you mean?" "I only mean," said the woman, "that I am not a bird in a forest clearing." At these words, the dervish was astounded. "My wrath is not harming you, and you can even read my thoughts," he spluttered. And he begged the woman to become his teacher. "If you have disobeyed your own original teacher, you will fail me too," said the woman. "Well, at least tell me how you reached a stage of understanding so much greater than mine," asked the dervish. "By obeying my teacher. He told me to attend his lectures and his exercises when he called me. Otherwise, I was to regard my worldly tasks as my exercises. In this way, though I have not heard from him for years, my inner life has constantly expanded, giving me such powers as you have seen, and many others." The dervish returned to the tekia of his teacher for further guidance. The master refused to allow him to discuss anything, but merely said when he appeared, "Go and serve under a certain scavenger who cleans the streets in such and such a town." Because the dervish held his teacher in such high regard, he went to that town. But when he arrived at the place where the scavenger worked, and saw him standing there covered in filth, he recoiled from approaching him, and could not imagine himself as his servant. As he stood there irresolutely, the scavenger said, calling him by his name, "Lajawad, what bird would you kill today? Lajawad, what woman may read your thoughts today? Lajawad, what revolting duty will your teacher impose upon you tomorrow?" Lajawad asked him, "How can you see into my mind? How can a scavenger do things which pious hermits cannot do? Who are you?" The scavenger said, "Some pious hermits can do these things, but they do not do them for you because they have other things to do. To you I look like a scavenger because that is my occupation. Because you do not like the work, you do not like the man. Because you imagine that holiness is washing and squatting and meditation, you will never find it. I have attained my present capacities because I never thought about holiness. I thought about duty. When people teach you duty to a master or duty to something sacred, they are teaching you duty, you fool. All you can see is the duty to man or duty to the temple. Because you cannot concentrate upon duty, you are as good as lost." And Lajawad, when he was able to forget that he was the servant of a scavenger, and realized that being a servant was a duty, became the man we know as the enlightened, the miracle-working, the rarely perfumed Sheikh Abdurazak Lajawadi of Badakhshan. Nothing for man except what he has earned. The superior experience and knowledge will be made available to a man or woman in exact accordance with his worth, capacity, and earning of it. Hence, if a donkey sees a melon, he will eat its rind. Ants will eat whatever they can get hold of. Man will consume without knowing that he has consumed. Our objective is to achieve by the understanding of the origin, the knowledge which comes through experience. This is done, as with a journey, only with those who already know the way. The justice of this state is the greatest justice of all, because while this knowledge cannot be withheld from him who deserves it, it cannot be given to him who does not deserve it. It is the only substance with a discriminating faculty of its own inherent justice. Yusuf Hamadani. This podcast is copyright 2016, the Idries Shah Foundation.